Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast. Today, we're joined by Chris Bollerud, CISO at AppZen's. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. And before we get too far in, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. Do you know if a hacker's in your system? Most people and most companies don't until it's too late and the hacker's already done damage. A hacker's job is to bypass your security, so companies need a way of knowing when someone's gotten past their security. That's where Cyberlinks comes in. We partnered with the best cybersecurity companies in the world to be able to provide our clients with the best solutions at the best prices. So whether it's managed SIEM, SOC, EDR, MDR, XDR, you name it, we'll help you find the best solution at the best price. Find out more at cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. And now back to our show. Chris, for those who aren't familiar, can you tell us about AppZen and your role there as CISO?
Yeah, well, AppZen is a fintech company. We do back office financial automation. We have two core products. Our first product is expense reports. What we do is we analyze expense reports and we look for fraud and compliance issues. We're an AI first company, so we'll take a feed of those expense reports, run them through an AI audit. Look for anything that's wrong, we'll flag them. If you are using traditional audit, an auditor will just be able to randomly pick a handful of expense reports, go through them. We'll go through 100% of your expense reports. For AP automation, what we do is we tie into the invoices coming in to your system. We'll read them, we'll match them with your purchase orders if they exist. If not, we'll tie them into your accounting system, we'll tag them, and then we'll push them back to your ERP. We have several products that tie in and work with that, but those are our core products.
That's awesome. So let me ask you, on the accounts payable, I think one of the big things that's happening now is like invoice fraud, right? So whether it's to the government, kind of larger businesses, obviously smaller businesses, they get a little bit of that. Like they'll get those, what is it? The domain registration, mailer that comes out, like, I forget what it is, like US domain registration or something. So a lot of small businesses will get that and they're like, oh, I should probably pay this. We need to register our domain. And they spend like $300 for, some BS thing. But for bigger companies, that's a pretty big issue, right? So, they want to be paying their vendors on time. But I think even wasn't it, there was a guy who got nailed for, it was, he billed Google and Meta, and it was large amounts of money too. I mean, we're talking tens of millions of dollars, and, just fraudulent invoices, and got away with it until he got caught. So is this something that is that something that AppZen works with on the AI side?
Into it, and we have a lot of fraud background in what we do in expense reports, and we're moving that all over into what we do with the AP automation. So you think we are doing all the extraction and then all the rules and doing a match against your purchase order if it exists, and having a purchase order helps to defend a lot against what the type of fraud you're talking about. But then the bad actors will sometimes they'll work with the finance department and they'll change the bank account, or they'll get a new vendor on your master vendor list. And what we will be doing is we'll watch for those changes, because we're receiving the feeds of the vendors. We're receiving the feeds of all the information related to that, your chart of accounts, so where things are tagged. And we'll look historically, where was this invoice paid? How was it paid? Who was it paid to? And when we see an adjustment, what we're going to do is we're going to stop it. We're going to flag it. And now when you're processing, your processors are going to see this invoice in front of you with some red on it that says, hey, take a closer look at this. You may have a problem.
That's brilliant. I mean, because I think that right there, even affects the smaller businesses, right? You get that kind of business email compromise, or and sometimes it's not even that. We've seen cases where they use a very similar email address where, at Proton, right? So they'll take the person's entire email address at, proton.me, and they will then, create a new kind of conversation about, hey, what invoices do we have outstanding? And now, boom, they're in the conversation and they redirect funds. So AppZen would work even then for smaller businesses. Yeah,
It will, yeah, because we're going to do a hard match on the email address, and that type of thing will not fall through. That is much more effective. You're saying email compromise to an individual, to a person, because we're human and our eyes may
yeah.
miss a slight variation.
Yeah, no, that's where computers shine, where we don't, right? That we can really use their strengths, to help, where we're weak because we don't see those things, right? But computers, they see it. They see the font that is not, the Cyrillic, I that's it's not, actually, the I, right? So very
Yeah.
cool. Um, well, that's awesome. So, how long have you been at AppSend now? It's like 7 years, something like that.
I've had an interesting journey. I've been with AppZen for 7 years. I came in when we were fairly small, about 20 people. I was the original director of engineering and helped build the engineering group and have transitioned through a couple different roles. But 2.5, 3 years ago, as we grew and matured, we're now over around coming up on 350 employees. We have probably a third of the Fortune 500, very large companies are using AppSen. Um, as we mature and grow, we needed to have an on-site CISO, and it felt like a good fit. I've been a software engineer for more than 25 years, but I've had an interest in computer security, even went to RSA over 20 years ago, but then ended up going down the path of engineering. And then when this opportunity presented itself, I was very excited about it.
That's super cool. I mean, you don't often get somebody who's there as an engineer helping to build the product and grow it, and then switch over into the security side. And I love one of the things I love is I don't think we've had two people on the show who've had the same path, to CISO or CIO. Not even close. You would think, and at this point, we've done enough that by this point we should, but we don't. Can you take us back through and tell us kind of your origin story, how you got into tech and what your path to the top was?
Yeah, I mean, and just real quick before you do it, I think you're right. I've been talking to a lot of CISOs over the last year, 2 years, and about their journeys, and there is not one journey. This is an amazing field in that everybody comes from a lot of different directions.
Yeah.
I've recently come to learn that coming from an engineering background, some ways can hold you back,
Hmm.
in that you need to change your way of thinking as you move up through the
Yeah.
organization. So I'll go back to my journey, like you said a minute ago. Um, I do have a degree in computer science. I worked for HP for 14 years and went up and became a master level software design engineer there. Decided to go into the startup world and been through several startups. I've been through 4 startups in various roles in those. But when I got the opportunity to be director of engineering here is where I started. It looked like a great opportunity to help AppZen grow and to take us to the next level. Now, we did that. We went up through, and then COVID came along. And as I said, our core product was travel and expense. It is analyzing expense reports. Well, guess what? Everybody
Yeah.
stopped traveling in COVID. But interestingly, the founders did an amazing job in the way they thought about this. They saw this business is going to stagnate, but that's when we took the opportunity to say, hey, let's build AP. AP is not going away.
Nope.
Um, you have to keep your business going. And so we brought on our second product, and it took some time to learn how we were going to meet our customer needs there. As we did that and we came out of COVID, all of a sudden travel started to increase again. And now our two products are both taking off. This journey is just, it's been amazing coming up through. Um, an engineer and trying to mentor other engineers and build them up. But now, uh, trying to take my transition and find the parts of being a CISO that were not there in my past, and how do I learn those, and how do I become the best I can be?
Yeah, and I think that's always a challenge for people, especially, I think the technology excites us and that's what gets us into it. We've got this interest in the technology, and I think it's a really challenging transition for a lot of people to go from, especially when you're in like when you're programming, right? You're deep in the code, and it's a very different mindset, when you're on the engineering and programming side of things, to then switch over, to that kind of, I think that's far more tactical. And then to move into this kind of strategic mindset of, okay, especially security, now you're thinking more of the business and the security as a whole. And on a macro level, you're no longer micro in the weeds in the code. And that's a huge transition. Did you find that
Well,
challenging or?
not some, I didn't find that challenging because I was already at the director level. So I wasn't in the weeds in the code at the time I made the transition. I was already running teams and managers at that point.
Yeah.
Uh, I think what was a little more difficult is when you make that transition at first, with the technical background, is you have a mindset that I'm a cop, I'm a security cop, and I got to go look for everything and put a stop to it. And as you start to talk to other CISOs and executives, you learn that's not really what this job is about. You have to become strategic, yes, but what you're really doing is trying to help the business forward and to mitigate risks. And that's where you become strategic, is you look for what are the risks for the company, pick the top risks and ensure you're focused on them so that you can keep the company safe while allowing it to do business and flourish.
Yeah. Now, am I remembering this right? You also have an MBA, right?
Yes, I do have an MBA.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Do you like do you think that was helpful getting to that director level, or do you think that your experience and everything kind of got you there regardless?
It's a good question. It's funny. I got my computer science degree and I didn't really use it at first for a couple of years. And then I went and I got my MBA and I started using my computer science degree.
Of course, because that's how that goes. That makes perfect
And but
sense.
then over time, the way the MBA helped me is not so much in being a business person, but instead in the skills of the design work I was doing and thinking through the way I would design so that it would make sense for the business. And I think as I got
Wow.
into being like that design engineer, to being an architect, to being a director, it was using those skills to think about how to take advantage of the technology.
How about that? That's brilliant. I've
Yeah.
never heard that. And it's funny, I kind of have a vested interest here. I have a daughter who's at the University of Maryland right now, who's studying
Yeah.
computer science and is kind of teetering on the MBA side. And I'm like, I think she should. She's excited. She interned at Bloomberg her freshman year, and she's going back this year for another internship there, both on the computer science side. And it's funny because that's a really good point. I don't think I'd never thought of it like that, and I know she hasn't. So that's
Yeah,
using.
that's a really, I wonder about students getting computer science degrees these days and what is being taught. It's a tough profession to try and go into
Yep.
when the industry is changing so much with AI, and there's a lot of talk about computer scientists will no longer be needed.
Yeah.
I don't buy it. I don't believe it. I think you need that core background. Like watch a lot of the way AI is used and what it
Yeah.
can do. Um, and you need people who've really studied good quality, or it's not as much about the computer science. It's about the software design skills. It's about the architectural skills. I was talking to somebody about this recently. We talk about using AI to generate code. Well, AI has been trained on all the code that exists out there. The problem is 95% of the code out there is bad or poorly written code. You've gone and trained on poorly written code, and now you're using that as your model to write new code. How do you get around that? So if a software engineer can learn what is good quality code and how to differentiate, they should be learning like the Martin Fowlers and Uncle Bob's, like learn what it is to be good quality code and then write rules and use those into your prompts. Now you add in the MBA aspect to that.
Yeah.
So you want to get your software engineering, so you're writing some good quality code, and then you take the MBA and understand how does the business work? What are we really trying to do? Because if you look at like what is some of these architectural concepts from a Grady Booch or a Bob Martin, they're talking about a breakdown, a composition of your code base to match the business. So having that MBA to understand what is the breakdown of the business, and then having good architectural skills from a software engineering background allows you to compose your code correctly. Now you take security in there and you got a whole new aspect because like I don't want to get on the one hand, you don't want to get in the weeds, but if you don't get in the weeds or don't understand what's in the weeds and how it could bite you later,
Yeah.
you need ways to do that. And I'm looking into now how can you design rule sets for the way AI helps you write code so that the AI writes secure code.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you. I mean, you guys are in that, you're deep in it. That's what you guys do. You use AI for your stuff. So I think there aren't too many people more qualified to kind of speak on this. So what are you guys doing stuff like that now where you're like, hey, look, how do we leverage AI to help our end users and then leveraging it internally? I mean, I assume that you probably come into this, you bumped into this where it's like, yeah, the code works, but it's not like this is not the best code, right? So have you guys made progress in that? How do we, write the right prompts to get, the right code?
It's it's something we're working on right now. And I think we're far ahead of the curve for a lot of companies, and that we are. I mean, this phrase "AI first" is overused, but we've been writing using machine learning algorithms for more than 10 years. We have a good culture of data scientists within this company. Our CTO has his PhD in AI. It's all over the company, and we're looking for every way possible to take advantage of it. So, yes, the engineering teams are using it in every way. And yes, we are looking for ways every day on how do we improve? How do we get better? This is what we did yesterday. We're going to do it better tomorrow. We're going to do it faster and better tomorrow. So,
Yeah.
we're always looking for those opportunities.
So I would imagine, you guys having spent 10 years now, in kind of the AI space, I think largely with machine learning, right? With
Oh,
to help on the product side, is that something where it actually makes more sense to continue on that path? Or let me rephrase that. Does generative AI, does that even play a part in what you're doing, or is it really the machine learning is far more targeted and better for what you're doing than the kind of resources you'd waste with Gen AI trying to do it?
I think everybody is learning through this process. Gen AI has certainly changed the world and is going to continue to change things. Um, we need to be thoughtful in the way we use traditional models versus Gen AI.
Mm-hmm.
I think somebody who says, I'm just going to go out there and start using Gen AI, whether you're pulling something down from Hugging Face or you're going out and getting a Gemini model or ChatGPT or whatever, if that is the way you're going to proceed, you're probably going to fail. because they're too generic. You need to think about the training and you need to think about the specific business case you're trying to solve. There are cases where machine learning models, because you focus them on a particular solution, they're going to be a lot more accurate, incredibly more accurate. And now and in addition to that, we were talking about the business. If you are just using a big Gen AI model, they're very expensive, right? And to try and solve simple problems with an expensive resource is not going to be cost effective. You may put your company out of business. You're not going to be making as much money. If you can use a small dedicated machine learning model, it probably costs you 1/100th the amount. So you got to target the models you use. And then with Gen AI, you can build your own smaller models. You can go grab your own LLMs, retrain them, and use these micro models that are really specific and specifically trained for the solution you're looking for. When you start to combine all those techniques, you can keep your costs low and offer a lot of value.
No, and I think you think of anybody looking to start up a startup now. I think they're especially the younger people coming into it where it's Gen AI is the thing, and they just want to slap that into everything and make it work. I think this is sage advice. That is not the most efficient use of resources or the really the right technology in a lot of cases.
I, yeah, I think as part of a computer science program, like you're talking about your daughter, you got to learn prompt engineering, but you need to really not just learn the technical aspects of it, but then start to think through the business aspects of that.
Yep. No, 100% agree. Well, let's shift over a little bit to the security side of things now. I mean, I think you've done a great job of kind of laying out how AppZen is using AI to do great things that people just aren't good at. And now on the security side, where do you see AI, coming into play, for you guys, for the industry as a whole? I personally, I'm fascinated by this because it's kind of been this uh, arms race, if you will,
It
in
is.
and so it's, well, they've got nukes, we've got nukes, okay, and everybody's nuking up, right? So how do you see this playing out, and what should businesses be thinking about? What as CISOs, what where should your focus be?
Yeah, an arms race is a really good way of putting it. And I think I'm part of ISC2 squared, and we bring in a lot, or ISC2, and we bring in a lot of speakers. We've had a lot of speakers talk about the dangers of Gen AI over the last year and all the security aspects of data poisoning or prompt injection. And it almost felt like a lot of fear tactics within Gen AI, and there is truth to that, and data leakage, right? Uh, we need to keep all of that in mind. I do think what I was saying a minute ago, technically using some of those techniques allows you to bring those models in-house, and that allows a lot more protection.
Yeah.
So now I'm talking about just the individual models and kind of protecting those. I think you may have also been getting at this, like this nuclear arms race of Gen AI versus Gen AI, good guy versus bad guy, because the bad guys are now writing much better phishing emails, and they're far better than they ever were. But you also see vendors like Checkpoint putting AI out to detect those phishing emails. And that is one area where that competition is happening. We need to be reevaluating the way we look at the security in each aspect of the company and where can these AI solutions help. Understand what are the threat vectors and where the bad guys can be using AI against us, and then what are the appropriate factors we can put into place? So business email compromise is a good one, or phishing attempts that are coming in. We see a large increase, and we certainly saw a large increase of these emails, and some of them are quite good.
They
Uh,
really are.
where I would almost want to click on them. Now, they do have, like you mentioned earlier, there's always like that one letter off in the email somewhere, or do you have your SBF and DMARC all set up? But having something to help with that detection, to automate that and flag them, now you can reduce your no, not reduce your surface area, but reduce the number of these attempts, these phishing attempts that are coming through.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm surprised that it's not, I think, more advanced on the defense side, than it currently is. And I know it will get there. I know it's, at this point we're kind of, I think we're playing a little bit of catch up. That it's funny how quickly the bad guys ramped up, because the money just started flowing in from ransomware, and now there's a very lucrative industry that is being funneled by ransomware, and now you can go on the dark web and a kid with, I say a kid, a bad guy with no real technical know-how can rent ransomware as a service, a business email compromise as a service, you know um and even now they're being able to steal somebody's credentials. They're having them log directly into their Microsoft account. They think they're doing the right thing, but you're really logging the bad guy in. It's their landing page in real time. You're passing their multi-factor authentication through. So they're getting far more advanced, and I think being able to I'm curious to see when we start seeing tools to actively combat that more on the kind of the user interface side, to be like, hey, look, this email is clearly a scam. This website you're on right now,
Yep.
this is this isn't actually Microsoft that you think you're at. Stuff like that you can use AI, and maybe it doesn't need to be Gen AI. Maybe those are things that can be machine learning, to simply say, to catch all of those we know the kind of tactics, and maybe it can be far better, just kind of targeting those very specific things right now, and be able to
I
help the end users.
I think this has already started, and we are in an age of a lot of startups that are trying to tackle this, and we haven't heard about a lot of them yet,
Yeah.
but we are about to. I was at a CISO dinner and sat next to a gentleman who built AI agents whose sole purpose was to analyze SOC reports and look for threat vectors, or and be able to reduce the amount of noise so that you can just focus on that. Um, what was the other? There are a number, like you walk around RSA and you have the big booths, but it feels like the large companies are falling behind and not keeping up. But there are a number of small vendors who are coming up with some pretty amazing solutions. And I would not be surprised if we start to see some disruption, in protecting our environments and being able to see the or these will get plugged into some of the larger systems.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think I can see a future where, like, on your iPhone, I think it was funny. I just saw the statistics from the FBI on, like, the elder fraud. It's
Yeah.
it's an enormous number. It was in the many billions, that just from last year, that was reported, and we know they don't really do anything about it. And that the number that was reported is actually a small fraction of what actually happened. But I can see the a path to where, on your iPhone, for instance, Siri is, you can ask Siri to listen in on your phone call and be like, is this, so an elderly person can simply ask Siri, hey, is this really my grandson, or is this really Microsoft support, and should I be, and be like, no, this is clearly not Microsoft support. Like, anybody could help that person with it. And I think something like that, I could see that, somebody coming up with that idea, getting it to market. Mike, Apple gobbles that up, implements that into Siri, and now the senior citizens have an easy way of kind of identifying. Just point your phone at the screen and be like, is this a real email? Should I click on this? you know,
It
that
is,
stuff, that's fun.
and it scares me a lot. Like my parents are older, and they'll forward emails to me and say, "Is this real?" And
Yeah.
100% of the time, I said no.
Yeah, exactly. Not,
I
not once.
sat down with my mother who did not have MFA set up on most of her accounts,
Yep.
and we changed that. We secured everything, and I said, "No, Mom, my middle name is not a good password, right?" So we had to upgrade that, and now she's using a password manager and with passwords she couldn't possibly memorize, right?
That's great.
And but it that is not the general rule of thumb
Yeah.
for elders, and there needs to be a better solution that's really simple. I like where the FIDO is going and
Yeah.
YubiKey, for
Yep.
instance, because you could train the elderly that this is like a key to your door.
Yep.
And if you use this, nobody else can log into your system. I would like to see more solutions like that that are easy to use.
No.
Passkey is a great one, where we're going with Passkey.
Yes. No, very good stuff. And I couldn't agree more. And I think those that are just simple for people to really get, especially the elderly, where I mean, come on, what they saw growing up. I mean, it's fascinating for me what we've seen in our lifetime. I mean, imagine, what our parents saw. I mean, they've seen it, they were black and white TV, right?
Right. The
To
transition.
yeah, to now virtual reality and AI. Are you kidding me? My car drives itself. It was funny. We were just the other day we were driving and I was like, we're living in the future. The car is driving itself and we're on a video call with at the same time. That's crazy, right? We thought it was going to be Jetsons where we were flying, but I
It
think this
almost
is actually
feels
more
that
impressive.
way when you go downtown San Francisco and you see all the Waymos driving around.
Yeah. Yeah. How's that? Is that I mean, actually I've heard good things
They
with
seem to be doing quite well. They seem to be doing very well. And the last couple times I was up there, well, I was up there last week, and you'd see on a block, I could see 10, 20 Waymos.
yeah.
And they're
I'm
really
look
out with all the cameras and the white cars.
yeah. Yeah. It's a little weird, but I think the cool part is I think we can see the future, now. Before it was like, oh, it's science fiction, but now it's very clear that cars are driving themselves is the better option. I mean, even with Tesla's data now, with their statistically, what is it, something like it's like 20 or 40 times fewer accidents on autopilot than
Yeah.
human driver. And we're not there yet. It's not, it's great, but it still needs to be supervised. So once it's fully, now you will just get in the way. I mean, which I think we're well on the way there, but now we can see the future. Now you can see that, oh yeah. I mean,
I love the day of thinking of like your personal taxis.
yep. Well, and then you get to thinking like, who's going to own a car when you can just boom, a car shows up. You don't need
Right.
to own it when you could just like hop in, go somewhere, hop out. I
You
mean,
say that, but then I think of well, my wife likes to keep a lot of stuff in the car, right? And or everybody likes to personalize their car with the things they leave in there. So when you hop in the car and you get to your destination, you have whatever it is that you wanna bring, whether it's a camera or things for the dog, or you're not having to bring those in and out of your car all the time.
that's true. And in the event of a zombie apocalypse, you're gonna want to be able to you're gonna actually want a gas car or something that you can just, you
That's
know,
right. Yeah.
that you can stay in. You don't want to have to get out and then, what happens if the internet's down, right? Because it's an apocalypse.
We can all learn how to go live outdoors.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, well, Chris, this has been an absolute pleasure, and I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. But before we go, can you tell everybody where they can find out more about you and more about AppZen?
Well, you can find more about AppZen at appzen.com. That's appzen.com. Myself, you can look me up. Chris Bollerud on LinkedIn is probably the best way to find more about me, I believe my name is spelled down there. It's not always like it sounds. And you could reach out and connect with me through LinkedIn.
Yeah, fantastic. You'll be linked in everything below and everything, so that'll be great. All right,
Great.
Chris, thanks again. Until next time.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.